what makes America the greatest country in the world.
Soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen.
Stood up for what was right. First step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one.
It's time we started talking. Pain isn't something we talk about.
All we can ever do for our heroes is remember them. And they gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. They gave up everything for our country, for us. Let's pray for freedom and justice.
Only be a war if soldiers are willing to fight.
Less than 1% of Americans serving in uniform. Some veterans not getting the timely care that they need. The good news is that in recent years we've made historic investments to boost the VA budget.
What is it? Why should we care?
We should care about press freedom
because we were informed.
In democratic societies, free, diverse, and pluralist media enable public debates and are essential checks
You don't
on
look
power.
sad. Let's discuss.
Hey guys, so it's me, Costa, and Thomas Wendel from DAV. Welcome to the Vet podcast, episode 11 actually. If it's your first time listening, then thanks for coming. And today we would like to cover some questions that DAV and other veterans organizations get to face on a daily basis. Some are questions that you ask us and some questions that we would like to ask DAV or other veteran service officers. So, Thomas, thanks again.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I call you Tom?
Tom's fine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, let's get started. Hey Tom, how do you see the claim process and the best way a veteran would have better odds to file it?
Well, basically, right now the VA has two ways of doing claims.
Mm-hmm.
VA has what's called their traditional claim, which basically means that a veteran comes in, files their claim either in person or on Ebenefits. And basically, at that point, they don't have all of their information, so VA may have to go out to a private provider and get that information or things of that nature. So that's the traditional claims process, and that process takes a little longer than the other process. The other process is called their fully developed claims process. Now, the fully developed claims process basically means you're giving VA everything up front. You're giving them any outside treatment records. You're giving them any statements that they may need. All they need to do is go and gather your federal records, your service treatment records. They're going to do any VA examinations. They're going to obtain your records from the VA Medical Center. So when you do that, that's called a fully developed claim. Now, errors that many veterans make is they file a fully developed claim and then they submit additional evidence afterwards. As soon as a veteran submits additional evidence afterwards, it then knocks it out of the fully developed claims process and turns it into a traditional claim. So that's one of the errors that a lot of our veterans are doing right now as far as the fully developed claims process.
So I guess the first step when I come to your office, I have to bring all my medical records and whatever I have or whatever I might think would be helpful for my claim, right?
Well, many veterans don't have an actual copy of their service treatment records. Now, their service treatment records are stored at the National Archives in St. Louis. Now, if a veteran does have their service treatment records, then we would ask that they bring those records with them so we can review those. We also want a copy of their DD-214. We also want a copy of any outside treatment records if they have those records. If they don't have those records, then we want the address of that provider so we can do the proper release form. Other things that we'd be looking for is if they're married and have children, we would be looking for all that documentation, such as their spousal social security number, their children's social security numbers, their the marriage license, the birth certificates, things of that nature, so that we can actually file the proper forms the first time around. Because basically what happens with the VA is if you get rated at 30% or higher, then you get an additional allowance for your dependents. So that's why we like to go ahead and do that up front. But those are some of the main things that we want veterans to bring with them. Now, once we sit down with them and have our conversation, we may determine there's other things that they may need. We may want them to go and get a medical opinion. You know, we may want than to do a specific statement. So sometimes people aren't always comfortable doing that statement right there in the office. So I may give them that statement and ask them to go home and do it in the convenience of their own home, and then get that back to me. So those are some of the things that we want them to bring up front before we ever meet with them.
So I guess the first meeting at DAV office with VSO would be just an introduction, like, hi, my name is Costa, and he would say, hi, my name is Tom, I'm VSO, and here what you need to have, or it's better if you have, right? And the second one would be more specific.
Sometimes it goes that way. It all depends on the veteran. There are veterans that do their homework and they come in the first time with everything we need. So when they do that, we go right ahead and we file that claim right then and there. Now, a veteran comes in my office and they may not have everything that they need, then that's where I'm going to educate them. I'm going to explain to them what evidence they need for the type of claim that they're filing for, what types of statements they may need. I'm going to ask them questions about what happened to them in the service, what happened to them after service. So I have a history of what happened. And then for every claim, we have to file what's called a power of attorney form. That form basically gives the DAV authorization to represent their claim. Once I file that form, then I'll be able to go into the VA system and look at their claim and see what have they already done. Because a lot of veterans may have already filed a claim in the past and they were denied, or maybe they're just coming in to ask for an increased valuation. So those are things that we like to look at so we can make a determination as to how we're going to go forward with that claim. Now, if a veteran walks in my office and they weren't one of those veterans that had all their information, I could file a thing that's called an intent to file. An intent to file basically means that I'm filing a claim today, telling the VA I plan on filing a formal claim in the future, and it would protect today as the effective date. It then gives that veteran 1 year to actually file the formal claim.
So what does it give a veteran as a benefit to protect the date?
Well, to protect the effective date is what helps get them more retroactive money. Okay, because if a veteran comes in today and files the informal claim, and we file the formal claim 11 months from now, it's going to go back to today for the effective date, which would then give them that 11 months of retroactive pay.
It's a great tool.
Most definitely. A lot of veterans don't know about the intent to file, so that's where we come in to make sure we educate them about that.
So guys, first of all, too much information for me, but for you, do your homework, and if you're sometimes lazy, just bring a big notepad and a pen before you go to DAV or any other VSO office, because better you prepare, better odds you have in future. You can always file, as I did, with the whole medical record, but if you know what you're actually doing and when you know what you're actually looking for, and with VSO help, with DAV help, you will have much better odds if you prepare correctly, instead of just filing and hoping for the best.
Yeah, that's very good, because basically what we do is we like to look at their service treatment records. That's one of the first things that we want to see is what were they treated for while on active duty. Because when we see what someone was treated for on active duty, then we can talk to them about what they're being treated for today. And if we can see that they're still experiencing the same issues today that they were experiencing while on active duty, then we can help them associate those two things. Now, another thing that we do is when we're reviewing those records, many times we see things in a service treatment records that a veteran should be applying for, but they're not even thinking about that. Basically, they forgot all about that injury, or they forgot all about getting treatment for that specific thing in service. So when we sit down with them, it's more about educating them as far as the whole picture. We want to see what you were treated for in service, we want to know what you're treated for now, and we want to try and relate one to the other. Because when you're trying to file a claim with the VA, that's what you need. You need three things. You need one, a treatment or diagnosis of a condition in service. Two, treatment or diagnosis of a condition today. And three, a link between the condition today and what happened in service. If you can have those three things, you're pretty much going to be successful.
Most likely. And let's say I'm a veteran and I got an American Legion office not far away from me. So I went and see the DSO from American Legion a couple times. And then I moved somewhere else and I don't have American Legion in my area. And I got the DAV office. How do you work with in between?
Well, basically, when you talk about separate service organizations,
yeah, for the same claim.
For the same claim. Basically, we actually don't work together with the other organization. Mm-hmm. What happens is anything that organization has submitted to the VA, mm-hmm. once we take over the power of attorney, then we will automatically see everything that they've done with the VA.
Okay.
So once our power of attorney goes into the system, we're going to have access to everything that they've submitted to the VA. So as long as everything was submitted, then we'll be able to see all of that information.
And it could be the case that new VSO would call an old VSO on the phone and ask them what kind of steps he did, or is it practice or not?
It's actually not a common practice, because what you look at is, every organization, does things a little bit differently.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I couldn't say that what they did, was the way I would have done that claim. So I'm going to look at the claim from the perspective of what would I do if this person was just coming into my office? Okay. How would I go about that claim? What evidence am I going to look at, and how would I go forward?
Okay. And so what are some basic conditions you see people fighting for on average?
Well, one of the most common, claims that we see is PTSD. Is one of our most common ones. Musculoskeletal conditions such as knee conditions, back conditions. Mm-hmm. Those are some of our more popular claims, and one that a lot of veterans, once they know about it, file for it almost immediately because they just didn't know they could. Mm-hmm. Is tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears. Mm-hmm. Many veterans suffer from it, but they just assumed it was, just something that they were dealing with. Yeah. So they didn't even know it was something they could file for. So those are things that we see on all the time. Now, depending on the era of the veteran, a lot of Vietnam veterans, we're dealing with presumptive issues related to exposure to Agent Orange. So we may be dealing with diabetes, complications of diabetes, prostate cancer, Parkinson's disease. These are just some conditions that the VA has come out and said, if a Vietnam veteran gets any of these conditions in their lifetime, we're going to presume it's related to their exposure to Agent Orange. So there's a regulation 3.309 in the 38 CFR that basically says any of these conditions, so there's a list of conditions, and you have the Parkinson's, the diabetes, the ischemic heart disease, then the majority of the elements are cancers, prostate cancer, lung cancer, and a lot of different skin cancers and things. So we see those with our Vietnam veterans all the time. And one of the other claims that a lot of veterans don't always know about, but we deal with it a lot, is a thing called individual unemployability. Mm-hmm. What that is where you have a veteran that has one single disability rated at 60%, or has combined disabilities at 70%, with one of them being at least 40%. Mm-hmm. And if those conditions are preventing that person from working, then the VA will grant them the 100%, even though they're only at 70%. So we deal on that. We deal with that claim a lot.
I would like to suggest to you guys, we got an episode on that, and it can be sketchy. Just look at that episode before you do that. So what kind of common errors do you see veterans do when they file a claim? You covered a couple of them already, but just an additional some.
Well, a couple of errors that veterans do is they just submit their claim and they assume that VA is going to look at their records and say, all right, it's all good.
There you go.
But that's where we come in, because we want to educate our clients. We want you to understand what evidence you need in order to win that claim or be fairly successful in that claim. And that's something that, maybe the treatment that you had wasn't in your service medical records. So there's certain avenues that we have to go to rectify that. Or maybe we need a specific doctor to help us with a medical opinion. So we're going to talk to the veteran about getting that medical opinion.
Do you send them to specific doctors or to anybody who is like professional in that specific field?
Well, sometimes we're talking about, if they have a primary care doctor, a lot of times we send them to their primary care doctors and see if their doctor would do that. If they're seeing a specialist, and we'll ask them to go to that specialist and see if that specialist would be willing to give that opinion. Then there's other ways we go about the opinions, through the VA system as well. But one of those things is we just want to make sure that they understand what they need for their claim.
So I would say, as an advice, go see VSO first before you file anything yourself. Even though the eBenefits is getting better and better, it's still confusing. Even for me, like I can read some complex like legislation, but it takes me a lot of time to understand it. And if I read something myself, even from CFR, CFI is easy, but something else like an instruction, it seems fairly easy for me to understand, but I don't know actually how it works, and that's where I actually I can't break that wall. So I need somebody to explain me how to deal with that. So even though the text can be written in clear English, even though I can like read in different languages, it's still confusing how to apply it, and that's when you need VSO. It's great that you have DAV, American Legion. You might have somebody else not far away from you. Just go see them and ask them for their opinion. If it's something that you expect to hear, then good for you. If not, you can always ask somebody else. And if it's still you're not getting a good answer, or the answer that you don't like, maybe it's very easy. So guys, go see VSO and ask him. Just tell him the same way you tell your story to the priest. Just tell them what happened to you, what do you have in hand, and what you should do. Because those guys are here for you, and they're always willing to help you.
Well, that's some very good advice, because one of the things that we look at is just those things. A lot of veterans will read the law and think that they understand the law,
exactly,
but they really don't know how to apply the law to their specific case. They may look at one specific piece of the law and think that fits in there, but it actually doesn't fit when you read the whole content of the law. So it's very important for a veteran to talk to somebody that has some experience and knows how to interpret these laws, and specifically in their case. Because a lot of times a veteran may have been denied in the past, and we need to know that they've been denied in the past, because there's specific regulations that come into play in order to reopen that claim. There's a thing called new and material evidence. It's evidence that the VA, has never seen before, that the content of that evidence would win the claim in and of itself. Many times that's a medical opinion. So maybe a veteran was denied, a specific condition because nobody ever gave the opinion that it was related to service. You could submit evidence all day that says this condition's gotten worse and this is what's going on, but until somebody gives the opinion linking it to service, it's not considered material evidence, it's only considered new. So there's certain regulations that come into play. So we like to be able to look at those things and educate our client. A lot of times, if we get that opinion, that can change the whole case. And one of the things that you look at when veterans come into our offices, and they may be coming in for one specific thing. A friend of theirs said, go see DAV about that one specific thing. I may not be able to help them with that one specific thing because his case doesn't constitute him getting that one specific thing. But as I'm talking to him, there may be 5 other things that I can do for him. So that's where they have to understand that that's why we want to look at their records, because veterans come into us and they tell us their story and they tell us about certain things. But once we dig into their record, we see there's a lot of other things that we should be doing here besides just what that person came to see us about. So that's why it's important to see somebody and not just do it on eBenefits. Because When you go on eBenefits, you're going to do specifically what somebody told you to do or what you think is right, whereas talking to us, we're basically going to review everything and give you our best advice as to how to move forward.
Myself, I actually like eBenefits. It's getting better and better, but as Tom just said, it's impersonal, it's a machine, it's got its procedures that it's got to follow. You just click, and most likely you won't be able to, like eBenefits is not going to dig through your army records, your medical records. It's not going to tell you like what kind of things you should file for or what kind of things you should pay attention to. It's just going to assume that you know everything about your claim and that you got to submit everything you got and just get to the like last stage and click submit. It's amazing, amazing tool. It's getting better and better. But I would say before you submit or go and click on eBenefit, just go see the VSO.
I think that's good advice because eBenefits is one of those systems that, as you said, it's improving. And you know, I like certain things about eBenefits, you know, but as far as somebody actually filing their first claim or if they're reopening a claim, I really wouldn't want them to just go on to eBenefits and submit their claim without talking to somebody. You know, I think you being able to talk to a veteran service organization or a national service officer with the DAV is very important because we're going to be able to look at things that, you know, eBenefits is just going to tell you about how to file the claim. It's really not going to tell you about what evidence you need to specifically, you know, file that claim or evidence in support of that claim. They're going to tell you they need additional evidence, but they're not going to get into specifics about what type of evidence they're looking for. You know, also, you know, eBenefits isn't always 100% accurate. You know, a lot of veterans call me and say, you know, it tells me my claim's going to be ready in November of 2017, when the system right now, you know, average days are roughly 110, 120 days. Mm-hmm. So, you know, they get upset when they see that in eBenefits. And so it's one of those things that don't always trust everything on eBenefits, but it's a very good system, especially when you're looking at, you know, tracking your claim. You can see some of the things that are going on with your claim, but you can also use it to get certain letters that you may need from the VA.
Exactly.
You know? So,
that's what I like.
So as far as the letters, I see a lot of people, you know, using it for that purpose. Mm-hmm. But as far as filing the actual claim, you know, talk to a VSO before you do that.
Yeah, I would give the same advice, and not because it can be done on eBenefits, but it got to be some sophisticated IQ that would dig through your record and tell you what to do. Otherwise, even from there, like if I put myself in their shoes, it's too difficult to make a system that would be a one-fit-all, because it's difficult even with the law or with some changes. And how would you expect like electronic filing system to know everything that you have to put into evidence? It's just there to file, but it's not there to like explain you what kind of evidence, what kind of stories they're looking for, what kind of papers you got to submit. It's just going to be a plain explanation of what you have as a document, what kind of documents you have to put into the system. But it's not going to tell you where to look for those documents, what kind of information you should put into those documents, or sometimes it wouldn't tell you actually where to find them. As Tom just said, additional evidence can be anything. Just an additional evidence. It's just an additional, just even if you look at the words, additional to something. Well, what kind of additional stuff can be to my computer? It can be case, it can be mouse, it can be anything. It's additional.
Correct. Correct. And that's something that we see all the time is a lot of our veterans will go on to eBenefits. They will file their claims by themselves, and they may win a few things, but then a lot of other things get denied. And then they come to us afterwards to appeal that claim. And a lot of times, once we look at it, we can easily see, well, we just need this one piece of evidence. If we had that, that would be a fairly easy win for that one specific thing. So there's one of those things that it's important to understand the evidence you need. You know, I'm not afraid to tell my veteran, when you walk into my office, you may leave with some homework, because It's your claim. I need you to help me to develop the evidence that we need. You know, I know where to get certain evidence, but some of it may be at your private doctor. It may be a statement from a friend of yours. It could be a statement from a family member. You know, there's many different things that we may need to have the specific evidence we need. So that's why it's important to talk to somebody.
Yeah, exactly. I'm on the same page. So in any way, guys, if you file in Ebenefits, if you file through VSO, it's going to be a long process, and you got to be patient. It's not only because of the backlog in VA, it's just because sometimes it takes time to review all the evidence that you have. So I wouldn't put it on the shoulders of VA or the system itself just because it's should be done, you would say, like in 5-7 days. It could be done in 5-7 days if you would have to pay for that. Since it's free and it's like a big, huge organization, you've got to go through all the steps. So be ready and be patient. And another, I would say, caveat, if you don't file everything at one point, as Tom mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, your fully developed claim may become like a regular claim in a second because you additionally filed for something else. And that's another reason why you probably should come on CVSO. Let's say if you don't want to file for ringing in your ears, that's fine. But just in case if you file for everything else and then you would like to add additional condition, your fully developed claim suddenly became, as I said, like very well
Traditional.
Yes. Yeah. So what can a veteran expect when going to PTC or MSLA exams? That's what we have here in California, right?
Correct. And QTC is in a lot of other states as well. But when you deal with QTC or you're dealing with MSLA, you know, one thing that's going to happen first is the VA is actually going to request the exam through one of those two entities. Now, what a lot of veterans don't understand is they may go to a QTC exam or MSLA, and they may only examine specific things. They can only examine what the VA regional office tells them to examine. So if you put in a claim for 5 conditions, but the regional office thinks that they only want exams on 3 of them, then that's all they're going to request. So a lot of veterans go into their QTC exam and say, well, I'm here to get examined on everything, and they may not happen that way.
Yeah. As an example, as Tom just said, let's say I'm filing for toenail fungus, I'm filing for depression, I'm filing for PTSD, for migraines, and for arthritis. And I got a paperwork saying that I am scheduled for my PTSD and depression. So when you go to that appointment, that's what you have on the paperwork, you don't have to show them toenail fungus, right?
Correct. Yeah, because that doctor is not going to look at any of the other conditions. That doctor is specifically there to look at the condition VA asked that specific doctor to look at. Now, you may go to multiple QTC or MSA exams based on your claim, because you may go to one doctor for your mental health, one for your hearing, one for your musculoskeletal condition, so you may go to multiple examinations. Now, the biggest thing for veterans to remember when they go to these examinations is to leave the pride at the door, okay? And that's hard for all of us veterans because, the military taught us to be, strong men and women. So when you go to these examinations, they're looking to see what's going on with you, how severe are your conditions. But what a lot of people, do is they may come into my office and really, tell me everything that's going on. But when they go into that exam, they only tell the doctor half of what's happening. So when they do that, the person that's rating the claim is relying on what the doctor and what the veteran is saying. So if they only told them half of what's happening, that's going to affect the overall rating that's going to come out.
One of the ideas, what you can do, guys, if you're not comfortable with doing it on the camera or in front of your wife, you can write down a short story narrative that you would like to tell a doctor. That can help you. because myself, sometimes I would have something in my mind, I have an idea, or I know what I want to say or I would like to do, but suddenly when I appear in front of somebody else, or especially when there is more than somebody else, I mean like 5-10 people, I would get all red and confused.
Right.
So you might have to do some homework and prepare yourself.
One of the things when you're dealing with your QTC or your MSLA examinations, I like to talk to my veterans before they go to their exams. Okay. One, I want them to know what to expect at an exam. I want them to understand, if it's a musculoskeletal examination, what the doctor should and shouldn't be doing. When it's a mental health examination, they got to realize that they're going to be talking to a doctor they've never spoken to before, and they got to be willing to open up to somebody that they're meeting for the first time. And when you're talking PTSD and military sexual trauma cases, it's very hard for someone to open up to someone they're meeting for the first time. So when I'm doing the claim with my veterans, I want them to understand up front that this is something you're going to be dealing with. You have to prepare yourself for that. So I like to talk to them before they go into the exam so they have an understanding of the examination.
How's the claim process going right now? Like, what do you see?
Right now, as far as the claims process, the actual claims process itself is going pretty good nationwide. One of the things that the VA just rolled out is what's called their National Work Queue. What the National Work Queue is basically every morning they're going to look at Los Angeles, for example. They're going to look at Los Angeles and see how many employees are working today. How many claims do they have? Then they're going to turn around and say, based on the number of employees and number of claims, they can handle this much work. So therefore, we're going to turn around and send this much work to a different station that can handle more work. So that's a new thing that the VA's recently come out with, is a National Work Queue. So right now, LA joined the National Work Queue about 3 weeks ago. And so we're seeing claims that are being done all over the country from Los Angeles, and then on the turn side, we actually get some from other places as well. But it's definitely helping to speed up the claims process, because maybe we don't have as many people doing the development part, but we have more people on staff today to do the rating part. So we may send some of our development somewhere else, and someone else is going to send some of their ratings products to us. So we're actually going to do their ratings, and they're going to do our development. So it's a way to actually get the whole system incorporated and be able to work a claim no matter where you are in the United States. And that's the good thing about the DAV, is we actually have national service officers in every regional office across the country. So it doesn't matter that my claim in Los Angeles is being done in St. Louis, because my people in St. Louis will be able to review that claim and in order to release it to the VA for them to put it out to the veteran. So that's one of the advantages of the DAV and us having people in every regional office across the country.
I just had a crazy idea in my head. Would you see one day happening that DAV, American Legion, DFW, many other, like maybe state, country service officers would be able to actually develop a claim and put it into the VA system, and all they would have to do just to click approve or disapprove?
Well, not that simple, but we are doing a thing already that's basically called the Stakeholder's Enterprise Portal. So the veteran walks into my office today, and they have all their information, and I already represent them. I can actually go right into the Stakeholder's Enterprise Portal, do the entire claim in that portal, hit submit, and it actually goes directly to the VA system.
And like that. Okay, all right. It's just for DAV.
No, other organizations have that capability. Not everybody's using that right now, but that's something that all the organizations have access to. Now, the best example I can give you on that one is, let's take, for instance, a dependent claim, meaning that a veteran just got married.
Yeah.
A veteran just got married and they want to add their spouse to their claim. Now, on average across the country, that claim is taking almost a year if I submit it by paper. But if I go into the Stakeholder Enterprise portal, the fastest one I've done so far is 15 minutes. The claim was done and the money was going out to the veteran.
Oh my God, that's amazing. It's amazing. So that's a message to a lot of veteran service organizations use.
Yeah, the Stakeholders Enterprise portal. It's definitely a very good tool.
Is it developed by DOD, VA, or what?
It's actually developed by VA.
VA.
Yeah, VA came out with the system, and it's been out roughly about 2 years now for all the service organizations to use. Now, one of the newer things that service organizations are looking at, especially DAV, we're looking at a thing called data to data. Okay, data to data basically means DAV, we have our own case management system. In my case management system, I can go right into our system, file a claim, click the button, and it goes right to the VA system. It's about the same as the Stakeholders Enterprise portal, except I'm actually doing it through the DAV system versus doing it through the VA system. So both ways. These are things, new ways of us being able to help our clients.
Myself, I wish everybody would use the same system. It would be much more easier to deal with. I understand that there are different phones like Apple, Android, they got to compete for profit, but when we are not competing for profit, and especially in government organizations or even non-government organizations, I wish we would have the same system. I wish.
Well, as far as the VA system, it is one system. So we all have access to that system. But as far as the different service organizations, yes, a lot of them have their own systems or different systems. And the hard thing, one thing that veterans don't always understand is when you talk about the power of attorney for VA purposes, you're only allowed to have one veteran service organization at the same time. So what can't happen is I can't have access to the record and then someone from the American Legion or VFW have access to that same record. So that's something that's hard for sometimes people to understand. They're like, well, it's just one VA system. Well, it is, but if I don't represent you, they won't let me look at anything. So that's something that veterans definitely have to be aware of.
I feel like it can be done in future, just different roles assigned to different profiles in the system, so it might be done, we'll see how it goes. And then with electronic signatures, it's getting easier, but I do agree that you need to have only one power of attorney at one time. So it makes sense.
And one thing for veterans to know is through Ebenefits, you can actually go through Ebenefits and request a specific power of attorney. So if somebody goes on to Ebenefits and says, I want the DAV to be my representative, and they select the DAV at 11,000 Wilshire Boulevard, then that same day or the next day, I'm getting something in the system saying, this veteran's requesting that DAV to be his power of attorney, and then once I click accept, I then automatically have access. I don't have to worry about paper. Okay, so because when you submit paper, of course you have to let it go through the system to get that paper. That can take weeks. Where if somebody goes right on to Ebenefits, asks us to be their power of attorney, we click that button, we automatically have access. The biggest thing for people to realize on that, though, is there's one restriction, is the fact that on there it asks you, let's just say somebody has issues with alcohol or HIV, and so they want to restrict access to those records. Unfortunately, through the VA system, with it all being electronic, it's either we see everything or nothing. So if you don't click that, if you check the box and you don't want to let us look at everything, then the VA won't put that power of attorney into the system, and we won't be able to see everything. So just something for veterans to realize that it's best to just give us access to everything. Everything's going to be private either way, so we're not going to release any of your information to anyone. So don't check that box. Allow us access to everything, and we can go forward.
Yeah. So you see, Ebenefits is a great system, and it's improving, getting better and better. It's a great tool. So use it, register on it, but before you file, go see VSO, DAV, or any other VSO organizations. Like probably I'm going to be biased after today and tell everybody goes to DAV. All right, Tom, to wrap up, would you suggest that we reduce a book, great movie, or stuff to do?
Oh, when you're looking at movies, Saving Private Ryan is always a good, war movie. Tom Hanks did a great job in that movie, and the way it was directed, the way it showed, what veterans go through, and to imagine, our World War II veterans and what they went through, and to realize that Memorial Day is right here, and so remembering the sacrifices that all of our veterans have had, and also their families. Their families are dealing with that loss, and so this is the time that we should be remembering that.
Especially Memorial Day is coming.
Correct.
Monday in like 3 days. And as always, quote or words of wisdom of the day.
Well, there's a quote from Colin Powell. The day soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day they stop leading them. They have either lost confidence that you can help them or conclude that you don't care. Either case is a failure of leadership.
Well, from my perspective, I think, Tom, you're a great leader and knowledgeable. I would be definitely comfortable 100% coming into your office and asking you for help to file my claim, or I guess any other questions. Thank you.
Well, I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.